Sato was a hopeless simp who fell for a hot princess from another world and accidentally married her. However, when their first kiss awakens his power as a hero, and he discovers he must fight 5 hot princesses to become the strongest, so he goes on a clapping spree to save the world. Everything started one evening when Sato was snooping around the woods until he got distracted by a bright light that caused him to fall to the ground. When he recovered, he saw a beautiful princess named Hime and her sage grandfather, Alabasta. It's been 10 years since the incident, and Hime has grown to be hotter than Sydney Sweeney with nuclear milkers. One day, while strolling to school, Sato notices a pair of rings hanging on her neck and flashes back to a time when she promised to get married to him. As he stares at the rings, Hime tells him their chances of getting married are lower than his chances of a hottie calling him daddy. Later, Hime invites him to an evening festival where he plans to confess his feelings to her. But after they have fun together, Hime tells him that she's moving out of town, and his heart is shattered into a million pieces as he realizes he might not see her again. Minutes later, a depressed Sato lies in his bed, but bolts when he sees a bright light in the woods. He quickly runs over there and finds Hime, who tells him she's going back to her world to get married because she's a princess. She then disappears into the light, but Sato refuses to accept this ending and follows her. When he gets there, he's shocked to find that the wedding ceremony has begun, but before he can wreck the wedding, a dark beast from the abyss attacks the castle. As everyone runs for their lives, Alabasta jumps in to contain the situation, but despite being a powerful sage, he ends up getting tossed like garbage. When he figures out that the dark beast can only be defeated by the rings hanging on Hime's chest, he yells at her to give it to Marsa, Hime's assigned husband, but Hime gives it to Sato instead and kisses him. When he lays hands on a sword, it glows, and he uses his enhanced strength to slice the dark beast in half. However, he passes out from the energy drain and wakes up to find Hime sitting beside him the following day. He turns red when he recalls that she kissed him, because it means she loves him, but Hime tells him she only did it because her assigned husband was a stranger. Later that day, Sato appears before the people of the Nokana Kingdom, where he's cheered as a hero who will save them. After surviving the stage fright, he settles to take a dip at the royal hot spring, only for Hime to show up and join him. When she gets in, she apologizes to Sato for dumping the responsibility of the world on his shoulders, but Sato brushes her off because he'll do anything to clap those cheeks. He promises to remain in this world and protect it, especially because the monster from yesterday was after Hime's life. On hearing this, Hime flashes back to the past and realizes that Sato has always been her hero. She agrees to remain by his side, but warns that her legs are staying locked until she sees what he's packing. Sato grows relieved after hearing this and likes that she picked him even though it was on impulse. He also admits that he's liked her for a while, though Hime tries to paint his feelings as platonic. However, before Hime can see what he's packing, the emergency bell goes off, and a group of dark beasts attacks the kingdom. Immediately, Sato and Hime rush out to get briefed on the situation, so after he learns about the monsters outside, he grabs a weapon to fight. But before charging out, Hime kisses him first to boost his strength for combat, and with that, Sato leads the attack. Outside, a dark beast tries to attack a maid, so Sato shows up and splits it in half, surprised that he hasn't passed out yet. Alabasta tells him it's because of the kiss he shared with Hime, and reveals that his bond with Hime translates into power. With this in mind, Sato realizes he'll need to take Hime to Pound Town.
Damn good deal.
Before he can reach his full potential, but he snaps out of his thoughts when a dark knight appears above him. Once the dark knight notices that Sato wields the Ring of Lead, he descends to face him, but Sato charges blindly, ignoring Alabasta's warnings to stand back. As a result, he gets slammed into a wall, so he finally listens to Alabasta and makes a run for it. While he flees, the Dark Knight sends dark beasts after him, but Alabasta cuts them off with his magic, only to be shocked when the Dark Knight shows up on their escape route. Before things can get worse, Marsa shows up, lights the Dark Knight up, and leads the way to another exit, where Sato meets Hime. They all head out of the kingdom on a chariot, and on the way, Sato thanks Marsa for all the help. Curious, he asks if the kingdom will be safe, and Alabasta explains that the Dark Beast will leave since they're after the Ring King and the rings. When he mentions that defeating the Dark Knight will be hard, Sato feels it's his responsibility to fight him, but Alabasta makes it clear they're fleeing because he's not strong enough. He tells Sato that he only has a fraction of his powers, and reveals that he'll need to obtain the remaining 4 rings from the other princesses. On hearing this, Sato freaks out because it means he'll have to marry 4 other hot chicks.
Yes! 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 Yes!
While Hime grows jealous because she doesn't like sharing. Later that evening, they arrive at an inn, and since there are only 2 rooms available, Sato is forced to share one with Hime. Before leaving, Alabasta narrates the tale of the first Ring King, who existed hundreds of years ago, when the world was on the verge of being consumed by darkness. At that time, many nations were covered by the shadow of death and lost, So the Ring King sought to dispel the darkness by forging 5 rings imbued with magic. The 5 rings were the Ring of Lead and the other 4 elements, and he used them to fight a grueling battle where he defeated the Abyss King and sealed him away. As time went on, the Ring King married 5 princesses, and each ring was passed down through the generations within 5 different nations. Currently, the Abyss King has revived, and Alabasta fears that it's already regaining its power, because it's game over if it does. He states that the duty of the Ring King is to obtain all the rings from the 5 princesses and use their power to seal the Abyss. After the lecture, Hime joins Sato in bed and is shocked when she notices all the bruises on his back. Her mood shifts as she blames his condition on her reckless decision, so she runs out to get some air. Sato follows after her, but even after looking around the inn, he doesn't find her. Instead, he runs into Marse, who immediately thinks they're having bedroom issues, but Sato gets defensive and denies it. Marse then expresses gratitude to Sato for showing up the way he did, because he never wanted to be the Ring King. He commends Sato for leaving his world behind because of Hime and figures that she must be precious to him. So he points him in the direction Hime went and sends him off. When Sato finally finds Hime, he tells her he loves her so much and that he joined her in this world because he wants to be here. He also tells her not to feel responsible for what happens to him, and Hime smiles, seeing that he has a clear resolve. As for her resolve wavers because she was ready to handle getting married to a stranger to protect this world, and now she's confused since Sato has shown up. She admits that she's in love with him, but doesn't like that they'll meet other princesses and eat their cakes. Hearing this, Sato apologizes for being insensitive, but Hime tells him it's cool and reveals that she's ready to fulfill her duty to him as his wife. Yet when they reach the bedroom, the couple freezes because they're too shy to go first. After a while, Sato finally grows a pair and pins Hime on the bed, but he grows nervous because she's too much for him to handle. So he tells her to postpone their child-making session until he's added an extra inch, and she agrees.
My disappointment is immeasurable.
Eventually, she kisses him goodnight, but the next morning, she looks tired because she couldn't sleep on the same bed with Sato. Alabasta advises them to harden their bond, but Hime figures the only thing that will get long and hard is their day ahead. Before leaving the inn, Marse gives the couple a royal cloak so they don't draw too much attention because of their otherworldly outfits. Alabasta reveals that their next destination is the elven hidden village called Ronka, and because their chicks are so hot, the freaky sage looks forward to getting there fast. Jealous, Hime reminds Sato that she's his wife, warning that no hanky-panky with a petted elf baddie is worth getting a divorce. On reaching Ronka, they find the village surrounded by a tempest wall, which blocks entry of outsiders. Alabasta finds it weird that the village turned out this way because the last time he came here, there was no tempest wall. Suddenly, a bear shows up, and Sato thinks it'd be a great idea to become friends with it. But after the bear opens its mouth, he joins the others to run. They soon get trapped with nowhere else to go, but thanks to some elves, they manage to avoid getting eaten. Alabasta thanks them for the help, and after that, Sato introduces himself as the Ring King and asks to see their princess. Both elves' moods shift after hearing Sato's request, but they agree to lead him to their sacred palace. Getting there, Sato finds Nefertiti, the princess, hiding behind her throne, and quickly figures out that she's scared of him. Once she summons the courage to talk, she asks Sato if he's married to Hime, and when he admits it, she freaks out and runs away, thinking he has clapped Hime already. As Sato processes what just happened, Nefertiti's brother Jade shows up and apologizes for having a shut-in sister. He introduces himself as the eldest son of the previous Wind King of Ronka, and has his guards surround Sato when he realizes that he's the Ring King. As the others wonder what's going on, Jade promises to host them properly but insists on taking Sato into custody for a while. However, he restrains Sato in a cellar and crashes out at the thought of his innocent sister being in bed with him. He calls Nefertiti an angel, emphasizing that she hasn't left the castle or the borders of their nation for certain reasons, and because she's 54, he finds it way too early for her to get married.
Hey, yo, what the?
He also promises to watch her grow into a mature woman and condemns Sato to wait 8 decades before he can have her. As he leaves, Sato freaks out because remaining there means he'll die without having his V card swiped. Meanwhile, Jade gets questioned by a guard about his actions, and he reveals that he doesn't care about the Ring King because he believes their nation is safe as long as the Tempest Wall exists. About 3 days later, Sato grows exhausted from endless gooning. But he finds another reason to goon when a hot elf named Peridot appears in his cell. She pins him to the bed and covers his mouth, asking what he aims to achieve by obtaining all 5 rings. Deep down, she thinks Sato wants to be powerful enough to clap all the hot elves, but she's shocked to find that Sato is only interested in clapping Hime and making her call him Daddy.
Oh yes, Daddy.
As a result, Peridot grows interested in him, so she breaks him out of the cellar and leads the way to where the other ring is kept. On getting there, he finds the wind ring on the petrified bodies of the kingdom's previous king and queen, but before he can ask why Nefritis doesn't have it, Peridot drags him to a corner to avoid getting spotted. Just then, Nefritis shows up in the temple and prays to her parents, promising never to join Sato outside the kingdom. Curious, Sato asks about the statues, and he's shocked to learn they're the reason behind the Tempest Wall. He ends up getting spotted by Nefritis, who faints the moment she sees him, but he catches her before she can hit the ground. Soon, word reaches Jade that Nefritis is missing, and he freaks out, thinking Sato might be involved. Meanwhile, Sato sits alone beside Nefritis, who is asleep, waiting for her to wake up because, before now, Peridot told him to find a way to convince the princess to flip to his side. While Nefritis lies asleep, Sato's worldly desires kick in, but she wakes up before he can put something inside her mouth. Nefritis freaks out when she sees him up close. Meanwhile, Jade checks the cellar and realizes that Sato is gone. He immediately suspects Sato had a hand in Nefritis' disappearance, only to be shocked when Peridot arrives and tells him Sato has eloped with Nefritis. Jade crashes out at the thought of Nefritis being defiled by Sato, but when he calms down, he begins to suspect Peridot and promises to search her lair. In the meantime, Nefritis grows shy because she threw up on her clothes, and Sato helped her wash them. While they talk, Sato notices her sudden interest in his world and finds it weird, because she's not the type to go out. But Nefritis admits she usually reads the books Jade gives her, and to her, reading those books is fun, especially because she gets to create mental images of what the outside world looks like. After that, Sato revealed he didn't come to this world for special powers, but because he didn't want to be separated from the woman he loved. Hearing this, Nefritis begins to see him differently, so she throws herself at him and promises to join him in his world one day. But in her excitement, she forgets how close they are, and when she sees Sato staring at her plot, her face turns red. Curious, Sato asks why she's never gone outside despite being so interested in other worlds. But before she can answer, Jade stands outside and calls out to her. Sato tells her she doesn't have to be forced into being his wife, and it's up to her to decide if she wants to be with him or not. So Nefritis decides she'll talk some sense into her brother, so they'll all be on the same page. Outside, Nefritis tries talking Jade into believing that Sato is a good man, but Jade refuses to listen because he feels the wind ring shouldn't leave his petrified parents. When Nefritis argues that she'll have to inherit it someday, Jade scolds her and tells her he's not asking for her opinion. With that, all of her zeal to convince him dies, and she ends up joining his side instead. Now Sato stands alone against Jade, who is about to pass judgment on him for breaking out of prison. However, Peridot shows up and takes the blame for breaking him out, but Jade agrees to look the other way as long as she watches Sato. Later, Sato meets up with Hime, who is a bit jealous that he managed to get familiar with Nefritis. As Sato realizes this, Peridot shows up and introduces herself as the oldest elf in Ronka. On realizing that she's a few centuries old, Sato asks her about Nefritis' parents, and she agrees to give them a history lesson upon how the Ronka kingdom became enveloped in a tempest wall. In the past, Nefritis and Jade's mother wasn't the firstborn meant to inherit the wind ring, because she had an older sister. To keep the ring from leaving the village, there was a rule that forced the princesses to marry someone from within their kingdom. However, the eldest princess fell in love with a human traveler, and it was believed that he wanted to steal the wind ring from the start. This caused various rumors to spread among the people, and in a short time, everyone was convinced about the foreigner, especially as the princess's love for him grew stronger. But a time came when he suddenly stopped appearing before the princess, and Peridot couldn't tell what made him disappear. His disappearance caused the princess's heart to be swallowed by despair, so she left the kingdom after cursing it to be swallowed by the abyss. The curse weighed heavily on the elven race because of their long lifespans, so as the years went by, the people became more consumed by fear. When Nefritis' parents inherited the wind ring, they sacrificed themselves to create a barrier of wind around the kingdom to protect it. But before then, Nefritis' mom made her daughter promise never to venture past the wall of wind, which led to her becoming a shut-in princess. Presently, Nefritis remembers the promise she made to her mother, and she weeps because she's gone. The following day, Alabasta tells Sato to ignore the wind ring for now and find the other princesses because they are running out of time. Though Sato knows this, he feels bad about leaving since Nefritis got scolded because of him. In the meantime, Jade receives a report from a guard and learns that a pack of dark beasts has made it past the Tempest Wall. Shocked, Jade grows frustrated because the barrier that his parents sacrificed their lives to erect is being breached by monsters. Meanwhile, as Sato prepares to leave Ronka, he notices the breach and sees that the dark beasts are headed for the palace. Immediately, he cancels his trip and allows Hime to kiss him, so he'll be powerful enough to fight. While the dark beasts terrorize the citizens, Peridot tells Nefritis about the breach, but the shut-in princess chooses to remain inside, believing her brother will handle the situation. In the meantime, a dark knight enters the Ronkan temple and tries stealing the wind rings from the petrified couple, but he's interrupted when Jade shows up. On seeing that the Dark Knight is after the Wind Rings, Jade attacks him because the kingdom will lose its Tempest Wall if the rings are gone, but he's countered and tossed to the ground like trash. However, he gets up and prepares to fight again, despite knowing his chances of winning are near zero. When the Dark Knight attacks again, Jade assumes a defensive position to block, but Alabasta arrives with the others and saves him. Rather than be grateful, Jade wonders why Sato returned, but Sato tells him it's not to save his ugly face. He says he's there because the kingdom is Nephritis' home and he'd like to protect it. He then activates the power of the ring and joins Marsa to fight. But despite having so much power, the Dark Knight easily bodies him. Deep down, Hime knows the power boost she gave him earlier wasn't enough, so she runs off to Nephritis' room and tries asking for her help. Meanwhile, Alabasta advises Sato to retreat because the Dark Knight is too strong, but Sato refuses because the Wind Ring is at risk. Suddenly, Peridot shows up and tells him that Hemed is trying to convince Nephritis to help him. Shocked, he wonders why Hemed is doing that, and Peridot tells him it's because Hemed cares about him a lot. She then joins him in battle and uses her wind magic to buy Hime some time. Hime, on the other hand, manages to convince Nephritis to marry Sato, so Sato arrives at the Ronkin Temple to shatter her parents' petrified bodies and obtain the Wind Rings. Before Jade can process what's about to happen, Hime helps Nephritis destroy the statue, which causes the Tempest Wall protecting the kingdom to dissolve. Without thinking twice, Nephritis kisses Sato and gives him the Wind Ring, which allows him to manipulate the air outside the palace and wipe all the dark beasts out. After that, Sato charges at the Dark Knight, but on the way, the Dark Knight shoots a gush of wind at him. However, Sato finds it weird that he can now manipulate the enemy's wind attack, so he dissolves it and defeats the Dark Knight. But he passes out from using too much magic, and wakes up the next day to find He-Man in bed with him. Soon, a royal named Smaragdi enters his chambers and thanks him for saving the kingdom from the dark beasts. Confused, Sato asks who she is, and Alabasta reveals that she's the elder sister of the previous queen. On hearing this, Hime realizes that Smaragdi was the princess who fled the country after placing a curse on it. Curious, Sato asks what she's doing there, but Peridot reminds him she was the one behind the Dark Knight's mask. Although everything seems shocking to Sato, it begins to make sense when Peridot shows him the ring that was controlling Smaragdi. Smaragdi confesses that she got it after she fled the kingdom, back when her heart was filled with despair from losing the man she loved. While she wandered, the Abyss King took advantage of her pain and lured her into picking up the Dark Wind Ring, which turned her into the Dark Knight. Presently, Sato finds it annoying that he has little information about the Abyss King, so Peridot tells him the Abyss King was defeated by the previous Ring King and sealed in Vanna, a place far north. Alabasta then cuts in, adding that though no one has seen the Abyss King, he creates Dark Knights using his black rings and sends them out to attack innocents. On hearing this, Sato realizes he needs to hurry up with getting the other rings, but he's forced to rest since he hasn't fully recovered. That evening, he finds himself in a hot spring, with both princesses struggling over who gets to be clapped first.
My time has come.
Hime lies, saying Sato has clapped her multiple times to make Nephritis jealous. But Peridot overhears and grows interested in seeing how hard Sato claps. She puts Hime in the spotlight and takes a seat to watch her live on Lifen's performance. But Sato pushes Hime away, claiming he doesn't want to be pressured into clapping her. However, he ends up showing everyone what he's packing, and Nephritis temporarily loses her sight. In the meantime, Alabasta meets Smaragdi and hands her a pendant from her past lover, who ran away. He tells her that her ex is alive, and that he left because he couldn't bear to see her scrutinized by her people because of him. Smaragdi grows emotional when she hears this, but the next day, after Alabasta leaves, she realizes the old sage was her ex all along.
Oh, hell no!
A few days later, Sato somehow appears in his world, and Hime cooks him a nice dish when he returns home. When she asks if he'd like to eat before eating or after eating, Sato's suit mysteriously disappears, and he throws Hime into his bedroom to eat her cakes. However, after he slams her in bed, Nephritis trades places with Hime, and Hime is forced to watch, but she jolts awake and realizes that it was all a nightmare. After that, she joins Sato for breakfast, and Alabasta reveals that they should visit the Land of Water, where the dragon folk reside. All the while, Nephritis chokes on Sato's meat. So Sato checks to make sure she's fine. As he's doing this, Hime grows jealous because Nephritis has been getting all the attention from Sato lately, so she calls him to see if he'll check on her. To her surprise, Sato ignores her and tells her to help herself out, and she crashes out. When Sato notices this, he chases after her, but is shocked to find a moving town on the other side of the woods. When Alabasta arrives, he reveals that the moving town is the Land of Fire, called Nidakitta, which is a nation full of wandering knights and cat people. Since running into the moving town is rare, Alabasta suggests they postpone their trip to the Land of Water so they can meet with the Fire Princess. However, Marsa's mood shifts after hearing this, and Sato suspects he might have someone he wanted to see up north. On arriving in the moving town, Nefritis's nerd signals go off, and she starts narrating the catfolk's lore without being asked, just from seeing their market. Alabasta praises her for nearly matching him in knowledge, but then overdoses it, going into another lecture on how the moving city was built. Unfortunately for him, Hime and Nefritis run off to escape his classroom session. Lost in adventure, Nefritis continues her exploration, but thankfully Hime has her on a leash. Just by meeting the gazes of many feline folk, Nefritis barfs a rainbow. She rejects the idea of catfolk being cute and insists that elves deserve the title. Suddenly, one of the catfolk asks what's wrong, and they admit they got separated from their crew, so she advises them to head for the arena. Meanwhile, Sato nearly loses it after realizing the girls are gone, but he calms down when he notices a lot of female citizens of Niitakita staring at him. Marcia then explains that the cat people value manlier men with beefier sausages, so Sato tries to act tough, hoping his fake it till you make it act will work, but they see right through him and go straight to Marcia.
Me personally, I wouldn't take this level of disrespect.
The girls fawn over Marcia, asking if they can touch his sausage. So, out of pity, he modestly tells them to check Sato out. However, they call Sato a scrawny two-pump chump fella with a short pencil, shattering what's left of Bro's confidence. Marcia then asks where they can meet the princess, and the catfolk lead them toward the arena, thinking they've come to court her like many others. Meanwhile, outside the arena, Hime hands Nefritis a snack and dotes on her. Nefritis says she feels like she's with her parents because of how Hime and Sato care for her. But Hime cancels that thought since Nefritis is way older than they are. Nefritis then confirms Hime's jealousy whenever Sato dotes on her and marvels at Hime's feelings for him. She admits her own case is different because she admires Sato, but even if she falls in love with him, she's not sure it would be reciprocated. Suddenly, a contender gets knocked out of the arena, and coincidentally, Sato and the others arrive. Hime rushes to warn him that the place is bad news, but the cat girls announce that if they want to court the princess, they need to enter the arena. They step inside and watch as Granard mollywops another contender. She notices Sato's rings and realizes he's the ring king, asking if he's strong. Stunned by her presence alone, Sato's brain struggles to process her words, but he barely manages to evade her sword stroke before she knocks him out with the hilt of her practiced sword. Before leaving, Granard scoffs at his weakness, saying she expected better, and tells him he can challenge her again if he wants, though he should remember she has plenty of suitors. Later, Sato spars with Marcia to learn the basics of swordplay, so he can challenge Granard again. During lunch, a catfolk explains that the husband of the fire princess must be strong, and since the princess is stronger than everyone in her tribe, she started seeking contenders from all races across the world. After hearing Granard's history, Sato wonders if he can really beat her, and Alabasta tells him he can with a sword, but it's possible if he uses the rings. Sato feels that using magic wouldn't be fair, but he's told it counts because magic is an extension of oneself. Later, he watches Granard easily beat another challenger, and thinks about it in the training room. Hime shows up, offers her lap as a pillow, and helps him relax by stroking his Johnny. Nefritis sees them and overhears their conversation. After Sato calms down, Hime tells him it's okay to be weak, and that he just needs the ring's power, so there's no need to force himself to grow stronger. Though Sato agrees, he feels like doing that will make him look uncool. But Hime says being a bit uncool is fine, and she likes it that way. Alabasta then shows up, saying it's time for magic training, so Sato leaves for practice. After a lot of failed attempts, he heads to a public sauna with Marcia. There, Marcia commends him for his diligence in sword training, and Sato is surprised to learn that Marcia is very skilled in martial arts. Marcia explains that those born of the Emperor must excel in intelligence and swordplay, and both his father and elder brother are far more outstanding than him. Curious, Sato asks if Marcia could beat Granard if he were the Ring King, but Marcia admits he might still lose to her in a pure sword fight. As they watch others getting scrubbed, a cute lady shows up asking if they want to be scrubbed, so Sato agrees.
You naughty, naughty.
Unfortunately, a huge brute shows up instead and wrecks his poor skin. Shortly after, Granard appears and asks Sato to scrub her. But when he hesitates, she reminds him that he lost to her, and should do as she says. As Sato gets a handful of her cakes and milkers, he analyzes her body like a supercar ad. While at it, Granard admits she's tired of endless challengers and asks if he's prepared. She says she wouldn't mind losing to him in their next confrontation if it means fulfilling her duty. As she leaves, Sato declares that he's going to win, so she shouldn't go easy on him. She accepts his bet. Later, Sato trains tirelessly with his sword, noting that he acted uncool. Sato wakes up with Nefritis beaming at him after helping him work on his sausage. She fawns over his abs, pretending she's just checking if he's alright from all this constant training to take down Princess Granard. Nefritis assures him he can defeat Granard if he uses the ring's power, and no one will question it, since that's the ring's purpose. But Sato still considers it cheating. Even so, he thanks her for encouraging him and leaves the bed, ignorant of her attempts to have his sausage to herself. Later, Marsa trains Sato and notices great improvements in his swordplay. But when Sato asks if he can finally land a hit on Granard, Marsa disagrees, saying she's a different breed. If Sato can just follow his footsteps, then there's maybe a 1 in a million chance he'll land a hit. Marsa advises him to use the ring to make things easier, but Sato stubbornly refuses and continues sparring. Meanwhile, as Hime watches him, she overhears two maids saying Granard is very fond of Sato and has allowed him to park his car in her garage. Flustered, Hime overreacts, then later crashes on her bed after realizing the cat-eared tribe's logic wasn't that deep. Still, as she imagines Sato exploring her plots, Hime quickly shoves the thought aside but admits she won't be able to prevent it much longer. The day to challenge Granard arrives, and as Sato prepares to battle her so she'll acknowledge him, everyone cheers for him, except Hime. She watches keenly, coping with the belief that Sato only wants the princesses for their rings. Meanwhile, a challenger who previously lost to Granard finds a black ring calling to him. The moment he touches it, he becomes possessed and storms back into the arena to fight. The guards try to block him, but he forces his way through and charges straight at Sato to unalive him. Thankfully, Granard parries his attack, but the possessed knight summons abyssal monsters into the arena. Right then, the cat-eared folks spring into action, with some fighting the monsters, while others evacuate the crowd. Left to face the knight, Granard tries attacking him, but her weapon melts. Sato follows up, swinging his wind-damped wooden sword, but he's swatted away like a fly. Granard rushes to check on him and assures him she'll handle it, but Sato warns her it's dangerous since her weapon didn't work. Still, she refuses to give up, insisting it's her duty to protect those weaker than her, with him included. Determined, Sato promises to lure the possessed knight to give her an opening. She agrees, and he enacts his plan by yelling at the knight to use his ring. The abyssal knight charges, blasting flames at Sato, but he endures the heat. At the last moment, he activates the wind ring, blowing away the fire and sending the knight flying. Granard immediately follows up, knocking the sword out of his hand before tossing her own blade to Sato, telling him to land the finishing blow. With the help of the lead ring, he slashes the knight down, so the black ring falls off, and the knight regains consciousness. After stopping the chaos, Granard tells Sato she sees his potential and considers making him her husband. But Sato surprises her by refusing pity, vowing instead to make her acknowledge him in a match and under his sheets. Soon, their duel begins and Granard completely outclasses Sato. Mid-fight, she warns that he'll lose unless he uses the rings. Meanwhile, Nephritis notices Hime still not cheering and tells her that Sato is fighting for her sake. Sato then tells Granard he doesn't want to use the ring's power because it's borrowed, especially because he wants to look cool for Hime. Hearing this, Hime finally cheers for him, promising to let him hit if he claps Granite and wins.
Damn good deal.
Sato gets fired up after hearing this, but he enters a trance where the rings speak to him, offering to reveal Granard's movements and help him fight. Sato accepts, and when Granard charges head-on, she suddenly vanishes from his sight, but thanks to the rings, he notices that she's above him and counters her in midair. As he's pronounced the winner, Granard kisses him, grants him her ring, and acknowledges him as her husband, calling him the first man to defeat her. She even tells him to plot things with her, but to her shock, Sato refuses. When she asks why, he reminds her that Hime already promised to let him hit, so after that, he heads straight for the bedroom to clap her.
Finally!
But ends up passing out after feeling Hime's milkers.
Do me a favor, please. Get out of here.
The next morning, Hime teases Sato about his performance. But Nephritis bursts her bubble by pointing out that he went limp before the main event. And to make things worse, Granard reveals she also watched the entire show. That evening, the citizens of Nadikita host a banquet, and Granard announces that they'll once again serve under the Ring King. Sato tries to confess to Granard that his victory wasn't entirely his own, but she cuts him off, saying he never would have had the chance if he'd given up early, so she appreciates him. Meanwhile, Hime grows jealous while watching them and ends up passing out after finding happiness in a bottle of liquor. Sato carries her indoors, but just as he's about to leave, she stops him, pleading for reassurance. He tells her that she made him glad when she cheered for him, and then, shyly, he admits she should postpone their child-making until they're back in his world. She agrees, thanking him for cheering her up, so as a reward, she gives him an open check, saying she'll do whatever he asks, and of course, bro plays with her milkers. Granard, who has been watching from the sidelines, finally loses patience with how slow Sato is. Frustrated, she pounces on him, telling him about child-making, and that's when the other princesses realize that she has a few screws loose, so they knock her out on the spot. The following day, the party arrives at Massa, the land of water, where Sato learns that Marsa couldn't join them despite wanting to visit. Out of nowhere, a girl runs up to Sato after hearing he's the ring hero. She hands him flowers, kisses him, and a ring appears on his finger, signifying that he has just married the fourth ring princess. She laughs at tricking him, then introduces herself as Saphir, the Maiden of the Ring of Water. After revealing her prank and greeting the great sage, Saphir calls Sato her town's governor and offers to show him around, warning that if he doesn't act fast, her town will perish. Before they can continue, an Imperial Knight commander shows up and orders Saphir back to the palace, but she refuses, declaring that she's already married to Sato, the Ring King. Without hesitation, the commander orders Sato's group to follow him, and on their way, they notice countless Hesaurus Empire guards stationed in the city. Sato learns that the commander is Sluder, the first prince of Hesaurus and Marsa's older brother, a man notorious for subjugating many nations. Saphir scoffs, calling the Empire an occupying force that claims to protect them from Abyss monsters. Granart adds that the soldiers are likely gathering support to oppose the Abyss King's resurrection. When they arrive at the palace, a monster suddenly bursts from the ground. Saphir smirks, mocking the palace oracle's prediction for being right again. The monster attacks Sato, but with Granart's warning, he uses the ring's powers to slay it. Witnessing the feat, Sluder admits that the old legends are no fairy tales. Soon after, Sato and his group are welcomed into the palace. But the moment Saphir tells her father that she has given her ring to Sato, the oracle interrupts. She claims that Saphir has made a grave mistake, just as she foretold, and brought ruin to their land. The king immediately grows frantic, and the oracle escorts him away. Left behind, Saphir explains that her father was once a great king, but now relies entirely on the oracle. Her younger twin, Saphira, then arrives after hearing that Saphir married Sato. She berates her sister for choosing such a plain-looking husband. Granart tries to defend Sato, but only ends up insulting him further, leaving Hime to salvage the situation. Saphir insists that she only married Sato, so Saphira wouldn't have to. At that moment, Marsa speaks up, reminding Saphira of the promise he once made. She cuts him off, saying she doesn't want to hear his voice. Hurt, Marsa storms away. Saphir explains to the others that Marsa and Saphira once swore their love for each other. Shocked, they didn't know, she begins recounting Masa's history with the Hesaurus Empire. Long ago, Hesaurus invaded Masa after exhausting their own territories, and since they were unable to win outrightly, they switched tactics by sending Marsa as a diplomat to infiltrate and learn the land's inner workings. During that time, Marsa didn't act as he was ordered. Rather, he fell in love with Saphira and swore to return for her. However, the Empire called him back and ordered him to become the Ring King. If all had gone according to plan, he could have married Saphira, but he abandoned his duty and passed it on to another. Not long after, the oracle appeared, and her predictions started proving true. The king placed her at his side, and soon after, Hesaurus soldiers filled their streets. Currently, Marsa chases after Saphira, telling her his feelings haven't changed. He confesses that he abandoned the role of Ring King because he felt unworthy, but Saphira, who is unmoved, says she can't understand him anymore and runs off. Elsewhere, Sato begins to suspect that the oracle is tied to the Empire. Saphir agrees but says they need proof to expose her. At that very moment, the oracle secretly orders assassins to unalive Sato and steal his rings, claiming it's for the ruler's sake. The assassins sneak into Sato's room, seething with jealousy, only to discover Granart missing. She suddenly ambushes them, knocking them all out, and immediately suspects that the oracle sent them. Though they escape using smoke, Granart concludes from their movements that they are from the Empire. The next morning, she informs Sato, and as they walk to the sunbathing area, an assassin looses an arrow at him, but Alabasta stops it without anyone else noticing. While the princesses, except Granart, slip into the water, Alabasta explains that dragon folk need sunbathing to regulate their temperature. Meanwhile, the cat princess brazenly eyes Sato and tells him outright that she wants to consummate their marriage that night. Unfortunately for her, Hime overhears and immediately gatekeeps Sato, declaring herself first in line. Granart disagrees with Hime's claim to first place, arguing that the order should be determined by how grippy they are. As the two quarrel, Nefrita sneaks behind them to get a head start, but Saphir interrupts, strutting in with a swimsuit that violates every rule in the book. The other girls immediately complain about her outfit, but Saphir shrugs it off, reminding them that it's her garden and she often streaks around here flashing her plots.
Hey, yo, what?
After breaking up the squabble, Saphir warns Sato not to let his guard down, since the oracle will keep trying to get rid of him. Later that day, Sato finds Marsa blaming himself for Masa's current state. Sato asks why he didn't become the Ring King, and Marsa confesses that the burden felt too heavy. Unsatisfied, Sato says Marsa should have taken it upon himself, especially since his relationship with Saphira was at stake. But Marsa replies that the expression on Hime's face when she saw Sato show up and object to their wedding was reason enough for him to step aside. He admits he's too weak to ignore people's feelings, unlike Sato, who was willing to throw away everything for Hime's sake. Calling himself a failure, Marsa declares Sato the true embodiment of the Ring King. That night, Marsa pleads with Sluder to stop meddling with Masa. Sluder refuses, reminding him that it was their father's decision to send reinforcements. He also warns Marsa that he still hasn't been forgiven for disobeying the order to become Ring King, so he must keep reporting to the Empire, or risk being left without a home. After the meeting, the Oracle confronts Marsa privately. She orders him to steal Sato's rings, claiming it's his father's will. She says the only reason he's been by Sato's side is to gain his trust so he can betray him. Finally, she reveals that in 3 days, an army of monsters will attack Masa, and Marsa should use that opportunity to unalive the Ring King. Only when Marsa corrects his mistake will the Emperor forgive him, and only then will he be able to win the princess he loves. For that to happen, he must slay Sato, the foreign entity in their world. The Oracle hands him an ancient sword said to twist and distort the flow of magic, claiming that the Ring King won't be able to defeat him with it. As she leaves, she tells him she'll be waiting for him to return with the rings to the Empire. The next morning, Marsa wonders what he should do, and he remembers the Emperor's words that his only value lies in being his child. Lost in thought, he wanders into the garden, unaware that a princess is sunbathing in the pool. When she sees him, she bolts as if he were played.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
And it breaks his heart even further. Depressed, Marsa succumbs to despair and yields to the enchanted sword's will. Later, Sluder holds a meeting in the palace, laying out the strategy he has devised against the monsters the Oracle predicted. He orders Sato to guard the palace, and once the meeting ends, Sato steps outside with the princesses following close behind. Hime kisses him to boost his ring power, with Granart and Nephritis quickly following suit. Meanwhile, at the riverbanks, soldiers struggle desperately against the monsters, and at the palace, a massive abyssal creature emerges from the waterfall. As Sato prepares to engage it, Marsa suddenly strikes at him with the enchanted blade. Thanks to Alabasta's warning, Sato narrowly avoids decapitation. In the same instant, another monster appears, forcing Alabasta to handle it alone while Sato clashes with Marsa. Despite Sato's efforts, Marsa quickly overwhelms him. Realizing that Marsa isn't in his right state of mind, Sato pleads with Alabasta for guidance, but the old geezer simply quotes Korra, telling him to deal with it. As the battle continues, Sato tries channeling his ring's power, but Marsa's sword extinguishes the magic. At once, the rings speak, labeling Marsa a failure and urging Sato to go all out and eliminate him. Sato refuses. Though unsure how to fight Marsa without giving it his all, he soon realizes that he hasn't suffered a single serious wound despite Marsa's superior swordplay. He concludes that Marsa is still himself. As they duel, Saphir rushes to the other princesses, informing them that Marsa is fighting Sato with the intent of stealing the rings. Alarmed, they run to the balcony and watch as Marsa charges in for a decisive strike. To their shock, Sato lowers his weapon and takes a slash to the shoulder. From Marsa's hesitation, Sato concludes that his true self remains intact. Calling him a kind person, Sato surprises everyone as Marsa collapses to his knees. Marsa begs Sato to unalive him, lamenting that the woman he loves has abandoned him. He calls himself a failure, unworthy as a prince, and even sulks for wounding Sato. But Sato instead thanks him, saying it's thanks to Marsa's kindness that he has come this far. Drawing closer, Sato declares that he will become Marsa's worth, and that he needs him at his side to fulfill his role as the Ring King. At that moment, the ring commands Sato to destroy the gem embedded in the enchanted sword. Sato swings and shatters it, unraveling the Oracle's scheme. The witch curses bitterly, calling all her pawns useless for failing to unalive Sato. But before relief can settle, the monsters break free from Alabasta's control and lunge at the princesses. Granart slices off a tentacle, only for another to seize Saphir and violate her more brutally than any succubus. Suddenly, the Oracle appears before them, and they immediately conclude she is the mastermind behind all the monster attacks. She seizes Saphir as a hostage, forcing Marsa to step forward. Accepting that he once did resent Sato, Marsa shocks everyone by asking Saphir to marry him. In that moment of surprise, the Oracle lowers her guard, giving Sato the chance to slash through the monster's tentacle and free Saphir. Marsa catches her in his arms, but she scolds him, saying it's unfair to propose when they're caught up in such a situation. Enraged, the Oracle fuses herself with the monster, morphing it into a hideous abomination to destroy them. But before she can strike, Saphir calls Sato a fool for being too kind and then plants a kiss on his cheek. With that, the fourth ring activates, and Saphir transforms into a colossal water dragon, devouring the monster as casually as if it were Kef.
What?
Horrified, and realizing she stood no chance, the Oracle flees. Sato, meanwhile, nearly soils his briefs as he begs Saphir to return to her human form. She obliges, but in the process, loses her clothes, revealing all her plot.
Magic.
Marsa then apologizes to Sato, and they shake hands, re-establishing their friendship once more. Later that day, the king addresses Sato and his crew, thanking them for saving his city. He informs them that he will lend his strength in fighting the Abyss King. He also thanks the princesses for helping fend off the monsters, but vows to handle things himself, and if the nation ever needs their help again, he will call for them. The king then apologizes to Saphir for the trouble he caused her and praises Sado, saying he is a good husband, but Saphir objects, calling him a fool with magic power. Marse, on the other hand, introduces himself as the Ring King's knight and asks the ruler for Saphir's hand in marriage. The king apologizes for not noticing Saphir's pain sooner and agrees to their bond. While everyone rejoices at their reunion, Hime grows jealous, wishing things could have turned out that way for her. Marse then passes the baton to Sado, saying he's next. At first, Sado struggles to find the right words, but then realizes the new couple have already consummated their marriage. As Sluder walks out of the palace, Marsa calls after him. Sluder tells Marsa that he is heading back to the imperial capital to uncover the truth behind the mystery tying the Oracle and the monsters to the Empire. He then tells Marsa to return home someday, promising he'll be waiting. Meanwhile, Emperor Hazaras speaks with the Oracle after hearing of her failure to seize Marsa. She approaches him, attempting to persuade him to join forces with her so they can conquer many nations. But when she tries to peer into his desires, he instantly cuts her down. He informs her that he only entertained her because their interests once aligned, but now that has ended. This is no longer the era for gods to rule, he declares, but for men. And for that reason, he vows to exterminate anyone who interferes, whether it be the Abyss King or the Ring King. The four princesses corner Sado on his bed and demand that he let go of his grip and let them do the job for him. As they fight for who should be the one to take the lead, Sado, whose instinct is screaming with joy due to living the dream, does a 180 by telling them that he's monogamous in nature. Hime rejoices, but the others don't care and want him to use them however fit to relieve his sausage. Instantly, Grenard pounces on him like a tiger, revealing her milkers and asking him to take control. He then sees two other princesses waiting for him to park his truck in their garages. And while all the cursed energy flowed into his pants, he gulps as he sees Hime disgusted at him for trying to share her personal sausage with others. The following morning, Sado wakes up next to his wives, so he asks Hime to go out with him on a date, informing her that they've been cooped up in the palace since they got to the Land of Water. Upon hearing about the idea, Nephritis rejoices, thinking it'll be a group date, but Sado sidelines her. To his surprise, Grenard and Saphir ask him to do as he pleases without whining about wanting to tag along. A while later, as Hime showers, she marvels at the body soap Saphir gave her and imagines Sado using the lather as baby oil. Shortly afterwards, Sado meets Alabasta for cash, and he hands him extra, advising him to spend the night alone with Hime. The couple head out, and as they enjoy sightseeing around the town, Grenard and Nephritis stalk them. They also wrap Saphir in their scheme, preventing her from slacking off. Unfortunately for Sado, the townsfolk interrupt his date as they give him gifts and request his autograph. Still, Hime likes it that he isn't acting like the Ring King and is simply acting his age, so she smiles and dotes on him passionately. Nephritis watches them, and she admits she's jealous and sad, but Grenard scolds her, reminding her that Sado came from a monogamous world. The cat lady calls monogamy a belief and notes that though the laws in their world are different, they can just change beliefs. They watch as Sado takes Hime to an amusement park, only to realize a little too late that it's a lover's park. Saphir, on the other hand, tells the others that the park has a lore whereby couples who kiss there are united forever. Grenard immediately gets mad as she doesn't want to be neglected, but Nephritis calms her down, and they watch to see if Sado will kiss Hime. Oblivious to the fact that they are being stared at, Sado sees Hime waiting for him to initiate the kiss, and as he gets close to her, he pulls back, embarrassed and not wanting to do it in public.
Come on, man.
So she teases him, and he internally admits that he's deeply in love with her. Seeing that no progress was made, the girls leave the couple, and Nephritis giggles due to it being the first time that she hung out with friends. Saphir then reminds her about the age gap between them, making Nephritis feel like an old crone. Hime notices the girls heading back but says nothing about it, and as she continues her date with Sado, they eventually sit in the field and discuss how their worlds aren't so different. She laughs at the fact that she never thought her crush would turn out to be the hero. Shortly, as they head back to the palace, Hime asks him why he asked her on a date since they never went on one in their world, and he says it's because their feelings are finally mutual. Still, it feels like they haven't done anything typical of couples, so it might not count as one. Sado then recalls wanting to hang out with her, and she seems happy about it, but she tells him not to do it again because it means neglecting the other wives. Upon hearing Hime admitting that she's happy he gives her special treatments, but saying it's draining, Sado yells at her, reminding her that she's his number one and he isn't talking about order, calling her the one for him. Her heart flutters, but she feels sad saying that things can't be like that and reminds him that all the other princesses are fulfilling their duties and determined to be with him, so he shouldn't neglect their feelings. Sado clenches his fist and tells her again that she's the only one for him. He pins her to a wall and kisses her, hugging her while at it, and she reciprocates. After the smooch, he nearly bolts to get some milk, but she stops him, saying she doesn't want to go back to the palace, reminding him that she's the one for him, and it sends blood into his little Johnny.
My time has come.
Sato's mind starts pacing about as he wonders what to do, and an innkeeper who overhears them suggests they spend a night together at her inn. Embarrassed, Hime declines the offer and suggests they head back to the palace. They do as she suggested, and later that day, Alabasta and Marsa hold a meeting with Sato and the princesses, informing Saphir that she must leave the land of waters and follow Sato. Saphir whines like a child who has to go to school and calls Sato the harem king, but she eventually agrees to it after teasing Saphir. Later, Saphir speaks to her sister privately and apologizes that Marsa won't be staying with her, but, like a proper adult, Saphira understands. She assures Saphir that she'll protect their land and then asks Saphir to take care of Marsa on their journey. The twins hug each other, and Saphir joins Sato on his journey to the land of Earth. On their way, Nephritis tells them what she knows so far, saying the capital, Adanokun, is inhabited by dwarves. As they venture into the lands, Saphir informs them that the dwarves were wiped out during the previous battle with the Abyss King, and the rest of them isolated themselves deep underground to lay guide. Worried, they ask Alabasta how they plan to find the Earth Princess, but he tells them that he's clueless. Later, they arrive at the mountain and walk to their destination on foot. About 3 days later, they venture into the mountains but do not see any signs of the dwarves. They start complaining, but Sato reassures them that Saphir can deal with any monsters that come their way with her transformation. She bursts his bubble by telling him the strain and effect she suffers after each transformation, and she finds it hard to believe that she's paired up with incompetent princesses. They carry on their journey and set up a tent later that night, but as the others sleep, Sato stays on guard with Alabasta and asks him if there's any point in guarding the wedding rings, since the people of the Empire are planning to fight the Abyss King without relying on the ring's power. Alabasta explains that the world is a vast place, and not everyone believes in the same metrics, so it's a normal thing to expect. He then confesses that based on what he's heard so far, the Abyss King's power is immeasurable, and he isn't sure the Empire can stop him, which is why Sato will have a role to play. The sage suspects that there's a possibility the fifth ring will come to them if the Abyss King's resurrection goes according to legend. After lifting Sato's spirits and sending him to bed, Alabasta talks down on himself. The next day, they arrive at Idanoken and see fossils of abyssal monsters scattered across the capital. The decapitated city looks abandoned for hundreds of years, and while Hime says she doesn't like the silence, the bookworm, however, loves it. Saphir, on the other hand, acts spoiled and asks Granar to watch over her. But Granar opts to carry her while they search for the fifth princess. As they continue their search, Hime senses an unknown presence nearby, but continues with the rest of the group after failing to spot the figure. They head to a throne room and Sato nearly freaks out after seeing a golem corpse, but Alabasta educates him, calling the golem a puppet that cannot function without magic. Nephritis then informs them that she learned the dwarves built a civilization that ran on magic power, and are a race that devoted everything to honing their mastery of smithing. They could manipulate sorceress machines as weapons, and were more advanced than the other races. After searching everywhere, the sage concludes that they'll have to go underground to find the ring. Suddenly, the puppet moves and attacks Sato, but he evades and strikes it back. Confused, he asks Alabasta why the puppet can move, but they realize that it's putting on an Abyss ring. The puppet complains on behalf of the dwarves, asking why their race was the only one that got wiped out, so it vows to get rid of the others. With its ring, it erects a barrier trapping Sato with it and keeping the others away. It immediately lunges at Sato, calling him an outsider who has no business with their world, but Sato refuses, saying that as long as it's Hime's world, then it's his duty to protect it. In that instant, Alabasta breaks open the barrier, and Hime jumps in to kiss Sato. Instantly, his sabers glow, and he charges at the puppet, but it creates another earth wall to intercept him. Sato's rock-cutting saber easily dices the wall and slays the puppet. Suddenly, a voice echoes from the Black Ring, saying that the time for the resurrection of the ancient king is ripe. The ring disappears along with all the other black rings around the kingdoms, and immediately, they appear on the Abyss King's fingers in a separate dimension. As a result, multiple portals open up and abyssal monsters emerge from them. The party quickly retreats outside to study and strategize how to fight the creatures, but on getting there, they see the darkened weather and multiple hordes of the creatures lying in wait. Sato immediately asks Saphir to transform and fight their foes, but she reveals that due to the bad weather, she's as useless as Sakura. Alabasta then encourages them to fight the monsters head-on, so they take down a lot of them. But after a while, Sato loses his strength and notes that there's no end to the creatures, so Alabasta creates a diversion before initiating a retreat for the party. As Sato tries to catch his breath, Alabasta alerts the party as he sees a huge portal with masses of abyssal orcs trooping out of it. So he admits that the Abyss King has revived. He falls to his knees as he states that he has lost the gamble, because Sato can't defeat the Abyss King without the fifth ring. Suddenly, Sato senses the Abyss King, and he panics, urging that they run away and try to find the Earth Ring. But Alabasta tells him it's too late, because there's no place they can go that the Abyss King won't find them. Without completely losing hope, Alabasta opens the gate to transport the rest of them back to Earth, but as a monster tries to snack on him like a candy bar, Marsa protects him. The sage then apologizes for things not going as planned, so he asks Sato to free the girls from the ring's fate. With that, he teleports them back to Earth, and stays behind with Marsa to fend off the monsters nearby. After being transported to Earth, the princesses try to live a normal life and dress like normal humans. Thankfully, the humans think they are cosplaying, so they don't take it as a big deal. One time at a restaurant, they talk about the way forward with Sato, saying they do not have any leads on getting back to their world, and he agrees with them. Some of them cope hard, believing that their nations will be alright, but Saphir, the spoilsport, dawns reality on them. Still, Grenard says she hasn't given up, but has also considered the worst-case scenario. She then scolds Saphir for having an appetite despite their situation. Upon seeing the rate at which the water princess consumes sweets, Sato mourns his wallet, but Hime promises to assist him. Saphir admits her frustration about their situation and promises not to give up searching for a way back. So Sato asks her how, and she says they simply have to look for Spot's tents with magic. After a day's worth of searching, the girls have a soak in a hot spring. Grenard then declares her new goal is to have many Nekomimi successors, while Nephritis vows to touch grass. They then remind Hime of her goal, which is to advance her relationship with Sato, saying that she promised them. Later that night, the other princesses stay in Hime's apartment while she stays with Sato. Concerned, he asks her how she'll manage, but she reveals that Alabasta had left her a letter and some money in case things turned out badly. Coincidentally, the whole adventure happened during summer break, and after returning to Japan, Sato and Hime resumed school. Hime, who had lied that she was traveling abroad, explains to her classmates that she ran into some trouble, so she's back in Japan. As for Sato, he sighs as he never expected to return back to school. Days pass, and Nephritis becomes accustomed to the city's library, while Granart makes friends with a lot of cats in the neighborhood, unlike Saphir, who stays back home and is constantly lost in thought. One night, Sato sneaks into the forest and laments their predicament, but Hime follows him, asking why he's been constantly going out at night. He confesses that he doesn't like the princess's fate, and Hime then reminds him of Alabasta, asking him to free them of their fate. She hugs him and tells him to find happiness with her. Sato pushes her back, and as he makes up his mind to say something, a bright light suddenly emanates from the nearby shrine, and a girl falls out of it. She gets on her feet and calls Sato the Ring King, saying she's waited for him for so long. But upon seeing Hime clinging to him, the girl turns around to give them some privacy. Quickly, they call her back, and she reveals she's Amber, the protector of the Earth Ring. Shocked, Sato asks if the Earth Princess was in his world all along, and Amber explains what happened after the last battle with the Abyss King. Back then, the dwarves created her deep underground in Idanokan and bestowed upon her the Earth Ring, a replicated vessel of the Dwarven Princess that would withstand the test of time. Presently, she walks closer to Sato and offers to join forces with him so they can stop the Abyss King. But to their surprise, Hime yells at her to stop. She cries, saying that their world, Arnulus, is done for because the Abyss King has returned, and that was why they were sent back to Earth. So there's no reason for Sato to go back. Realizing that the Abyss King has already awoken, Amber tells Sato that she'll be waiting in the shrine in case he changes his mind. The following night, while the party is having dinner, Granart complains about being bored. She mentions that Nephritis and Saphir feel the same. Saphir then asks where Sato and Hime went last night, so Hime lies to them without mentioning their encounter with Amber. Later, after the princesses fall asleep, Sato confronts her for not telling them about Amber. But Hime expresses her worry, unsure if he can defeat the Abyss King. She says it's better they remain on Earth. Meanwhile, Grenard, who isn't asleep, listens to them keenly and isn't surprised at Hime's decision. The following day on their way to school, after Hime leaves Sato, Amber spooks him by appearing from the bushes. She then informs him that someone came to the shrine looking for her, but he was simply searching for happiness. Later that evening after school, she meets with Sato at a cheap fruit store, and she advises him to go for apples. Later that night, he goes to her shrine, and she shows up, informing him that she can return him to Arnulus once he takes her ring. The next evening after school, Amber meets with him on the school rooftop. After learning that Hime has gone home early, she asks him if he plans to return to Arnulus as soon as possible, but he tells her that the look on Hime's face discouraged him. Amber informs him that the ring's power is absolute, and he can seal the Abyss King with them. Surprised, he asks her why she's certain, and she says it's what she was taught and why she was created. That explains that the princesses exist to help the Ring King defeat the Abyss King, and it isn't a small task. The statement sparks an answer in him, and he asks her to give him a ring. Happily, she walks to him and kisses him after seeing his resolve, and he obtains the final ring. Later that evening, he returns to his apartment, and Hime jumps him like a thirsty hoe after seeing the monster he's packing. She then notices the 5th ring on him, and he informs her that they'll be going back to Arnulus. Instantly, she breaks into tears as she worries about him dying in her world, but he reminds her how she threw away their decades' worth of friendship to fulfill her duty. Sato continues, saying that despite Alabasta's wish for the princesses to be rid of their ring duties, he interprets it as ending the war for good. He assures her that he won't lose and that she's the only one for him. Convinced, Hime expresses her relief and asks him to do his husband duties with her.
You naughty, naughty.
So he buries his hands in her milkers and tries to take their relationship to the next level. Unfortunately for them, Amber appears, announcing that she has finished the teleportation spell, which will take them back to Arnulus. Realizing she came in at the wrong time, Amber informs them that the portal will soon close, so they should decide quickly. Sato prepares to wake the others, but to his surprise, Granart barges into the room while carrying the other girls. Hime apologizes after realizing that Granart was aware of how selfish she was, but Granart doesn't hold a grudge against her. Saphir wakes up after seeing the bright light, and once she sees Amber and learns that they can return to Arnulus, she cries happily. In less than a minute, they leave the room and head for Arnulus. Satu and the princesses arrive in Idanokun, in Arnulus. Amber scans for life nearby, but senses nothing, so she lights up her gem and uses it as a lamp to guide their way. When they leave the throne room, they find the corpses of Imperial soldiers scattered across the floor. Following Granart's senses, they press on and eventually spot soldiers still struggling against abyssal orcs far ahead. At that moment, Sato's rings blaze to life because he can feel the Abyss King's presence. They watch as the soldiers launch arrows at the Dark Lord, but the Abyss King effortlessly swats them aside. Sato steels himself to face him, and Amber quickly points out a hidden path he can take to strike by surprise. Before he departs, the princesses give him their heartfelt support, kissing him and promising playful rewards once the war is over.
Yeah, boy.
With his spirit burning bright and Magnus in hand, Sato charges through the flank of the horde, tearing his way forward until he stands face to face with his nemesis. The Abyss King greets him with cold amusement. Sato responds with a powerful overhead strike, but the Dark Lord parries it with ease. Then the power rings speak as they merge into one, releasing an overwhelming surge of energy. Sato channels it into a mighty swing, striking with all his strength. The explosion of force annihilates every nearby creature. But when the dust clears, the Abyss King still stands. Even the unified ring is stunned by his survival. Exhausted, Sato collapses, only to hear the Abyss King mock him as another ignorant puppet. Saphir breaks down in despair, wondering why the prophecy failed, but Granart charges in to shield Sato. Amber rallies Hime, promising they won't let him die. Meanwhile, the Abyss King lifts Sato and attempts to drown him in the void, but Granart strikes at the Dark Lord while the others pull Sato to safety. In response, the Abyss King summons another wave of monsters. They fight desperately to hold them back, though Granart is nearly subdued before Amber saves her. Sato tries to summon his ring once more, but his strength fails him and he blacks out. When he next opens his eyes, he's drifting through fragments of memory. One moment, he's on his school rooftop, then suddenly, an Abyss ring calls out to him, filling him with unbearable pain, as though he's drowning. A hand stretches out from the void, clawing for his life. Then, a childhood memory of Hime flickers before him, and he awakens on the back of a giant bird. Seeing Alabasta, Sato assumes he has passed on, but Alabasta corrects him. He looks around and finds his bride safe. Alabasta explains that he carved out an opening to spirit them away from the Abyss King. Mars is alive as well, thanks to Smaragdi, the woman standing behind him, who helped them escape during the battle. With the Abyss King wounded, the monsters retreated, granting them a brief reprieve. Alabasta praises Sato's efforts and reports that each nation is fighting off the swarms of monsters that emerge within their borders. Though the situation is chaotic, the nations still stand strong. Returning to the capital, Sato faces the citizens and swears to them with renewed resolve that he will save the world. Later, Saphir turns to Alabasta, asking why they failed to defeat the Abyss King even after uniting the 5 rings. Alabasta admits that he doesn't know. It wasn't until his journey alongside them that he even learned of the black rings worn by the Abyss King. Amber confirms she had no idea such a thing existed. Lost and uncertain, Saphir asks the sage what they should do next. Alabasta explains that before their next battle, they must draw out more of the ring's true power, and for that, Sato will need to deepen his bonds with the ring princesses, even if it means pushing his body and his gear to their limits. Marsa soon joins them, relieved to see them safe. Alabasta then addresses the princesses directly, telling them to seek the strength worthy of being the Ring King's wives so they can stand beside him in battle. With a wary smile, he calls this process wife training. That night, a maid escorts Sato to his wives' chambers. As he opens the door, the sight before him sends sparks racing straight to his sausage. so Granart boldly tells him to replenish her energy. The mere thought of pulling an all-nighter scrambles Sato's brain so badly that he nearly fries his caveman circuits. The next day, Sato walks with Hime through the quiet capital. She shares that she has begun her bridal training as well and asks that he rest easy while she gives it her all. She leads him to her parents' grave, where she gently lays down flowers. Hime tells him her parents died protecting her when she was little, and that she has a younger sister somewhere in Arnulus, but she doesn't know where. Taking Sato's hands, she addresses the grave, calling him her husband and thanking him for helping her return home. What they don't realize is that Alabasta and the other princesses have been quietly listening nearby. At last, Alabasta breaks the silence, telling Hime that her magic teacher will soon be arriving. And just then, speak of the devil, a much younger mage appears, introducing herself as Morian Ravri, Hime's younger sister. That brings us to the end of today's video. If you've watched up to this point, let's confuse the fake anime watchers by writing pink tits in the comment. Make sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel and give me 10 likes so I'll post unplotted. Also, if you're into anime recaps like this, check out the next video. You might just goon to it. Peace.